Welcome back, everyone, to the Deep Dive. This time, we're going to be looking at how fractional roles and robotics are changing the business landscape.
Yeah, it's a fascinating topic.
It is, and you gave me a really interesting mix of sources to go through. We got news articles, we got research reports, we even got some opinion pieces in there.
Yeah, I think it's a really good blend because we're not just looking at one side of the story. We're looking at kind of how these trends are impacting businesses, at the executive level. How can you use this stuff? How do these things change strategies? How can you implement them?
Yeah, exactly. So it's not just like, oh, look at all this cool new tech. It's how do you actually use it?
Yeah.
And one of the most interesting things I saw, and this was in the Business Cloud article, is the future of tech roles fractional. Dude, it seems like more and more companies are going away from full-time employees, and they're hiring these specialists for specific needs.
Yeah, it's a trend that's been growing for a while now. And I think it's really interesting because it allows companies to access I guess you could say, a global pool of talent, right? Instead of being limited to people who are geographically nearby.
Right, and so, like, if I'm a company, and let's say I need a chief technology officer, but I don't need one full-time, maybe I can hire a fractional CTO who can just come in and help me with this one specific project.
Precisely, and that's exactly the kind of thing that we're seeing, right? It allows for flexibility.
Yeah.
It allows for kind of scalability. It allows companies to stay agile and to kind of keep up with the rapidly changing market demands that we see in technology, especially.
Well, and especially in tech, because things are changing so quickly that you might not even know what you need 6 months from now. So this actually allows you to adapt a lot quicker. But how does this model affect how decisions are made at the top? Like, how do executives have to shift their mindset in order to use this kind of new way of doing things?
Well, I think one of the key things is that they have to be willing to let go of this idea of having a static workforce, right? In the past, it was always, oh, we have our employees and they work for us full time. Now it's more about we need to be able to assemble teams of experts quickly on an as-needed basis, and then disband those teams and then reform new teams as the projects and the initiatives within the company change.
They really need to be able to know what they need, when they need it, find the right people, and then spin up this team really quickly.
Yeah, and I think that that's something that a lot of executives are still getting used to. It's a very different way of thinking about talent management. It's a very different way of thinking about the structure of the organization.
So what about the people who already work at the company full time? Like, how does this affect them and their jobs?
Well, I think there's certainly a concern, right, among a lot of full-time employees that is this going to lead to my job being replaced?
Right, that makes sense.
And I think that companies need to be very careful about how they implement this model. They need to be very clear about communicating to their employees that this is not about replacing existing staff. This is about augmenting their existing staff with specialized expertise as needed.
So instead of saying, hey, your job is going away, it's, hey, we're actually going to bring in people to help you do your job better.
Right, and it's also about creating opportunities for full-time employees to kind of learn from these fractional experts, to work alongside them and to kind of gain new skills and knowledge that they might not have otherwise.
So it's really an opportunity for growth and for really for everyone to kind of improve what they're doing.
Yeah, I think it has the potential to be very positive, but it's definitely something that needs to be managed carefully.
Now, speaking of change and kind of this big change that's happening, one of the other things that we're seeing in business today is robotics. And I was reading this article in engineering.com, and they were talking about fish.
Fish.
And I was like, what do they talk about fish for? This is about robotics. But the article, Why Fish Fillets Show How Robotics is the Future of Work, it's really interesting because it shows that robotics isn't just in manufacturing anymore. It's actually showing up in places you wouldn't expect, like food processing.
Yeah, I think it's a really good example of how robotics is becoming more and more ubiquitous. It's not just about those big, industrial robots that you see on, car assembly lines anymore. It's about, smaller, more agile robots that can be used in a variety of settings.
And one of the things that they talked about in this article was how robotics is actually helping to solve some of the labor shortages that are happening. No one wants to do these really tough jobs anymore.
Yeah, and especially in industries like food processing, where the work can be very repetitive and very physically demanding, robotics can really make a big difference.
But what about the whole robots are taking our jobs thing? Like is that a real fear?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a valid concern, and I think it's something that we need to address thoughtfully, right? I mean, it's not as simple as just saying, oh, robots are going to take all the jobs. I think it's more about how do we retrain people for the jobs of the future.
So what are some of those jobs? Like what kind of jobs are we going to see?
Well, I mean, I think one of the things that we're going to see is a lot more jobs in areas like, robot maintenance and repair, for example.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Right. As more and more companies adopt robotics, they're going to need people who can keep those robots running smoothly.
That's true. And I mean, that actually opens up opportunities for people to learn new skills and to get into a field that's, going to be pretty important.
Right. And I think that, this is where the idea of lifelong learning really comes into play, right? We can't just assume that we're going to get a job out of college and then we're going to do that same job for the rest of our lives. We need to be constantly, upskilling and reskilling ourselves.
So you're saying like people who are, filleting fish now, they might be, robot technicians in a couple of years.
Exactly. And they might even, move into, management positions, supervising teams of robots and human workers. I mean, there's really no limit to the possibilities. That's
pretty cool. But how are business leaders, how are they approaching this? I mean, is this just a bunch of executives running out and buying a bunch of robots?
Well, hopefully not. I think that the smart companies are taking a very strategic approach to this, right? They're not just saying, oh, robots are cool, let's buy a bunch of them and see what happens. They're saying, okay, how can we use robotics to improve our efficiency? How can we use robotics to, address some of the challenges that we're facing, such as labor shortages?
So they have to know what their problems are, and then they have to be able to figure out how to use these robots to actually fix those problems.
Precisely. And I think that, one of the keys here is to have a very clear vision, right, of what you want to achieve with robotics. What are your goals? What are your objectives? And then you can start to develop a plan for how to implement robotics in a way that's going to be beneficial for the company and for the employees as well.
So they have to think about the people and not just the technology itself.
Absolutely. At the end of the day, it's all about people. It's about creating a work environment where people can thrive and where they can reach their full potential.
Now, we've talked about fractional roles and we've talked about robotics and we've talked about how these are kind of changing the way businesses work. What are some key takeaways for our listeners? How can they use this information in their own companies?
Well, I think one of the most important takeaways is that the world of work is changing, right? And it's changing very rapidly. We can't just assume that the way we've always done things is going to continue to work in the future.
That's true.
We need to be adaptable. We need to be, willing to embrace new ideas and new ways of doing things.
So really don't be afraid of change. Be ready for it and figure out how to use it to your advantage.
Yeah, and I think the companies that are going to succeed in the future are going to be the ones that are the most adaptable, the ones that are the most innovative, the ones that are the most willing to to experiment and to try new things.
Well, and that's kind of what this deep dive is all about, is to help people see these things, understand them, and then hopefully be able to apply them to their own work and their own careers. Now, before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, let's talk about workforce development.
Yeah, workforce development, that's a huge topic, and it's one that's only going to become more important as we move further into this this new world of work.
Right. It's not just about teaching people how to run the machines, it's about teaching them the new skills they need to adapt to all of this.
Right. It's about things like problem solving and critical thinking and communication and collaboration.
Right, like those soft skills that are actually really hard, like being adaptable.
Exactly. And the Economic Times article we read, Future of Work, Adaptability Key for Corporate Success. I thought that was a really a really insightful article because it talked about how adaptability is really the key to success in the future of work.
For both the employee and the company, right?
Yeah, for everyone involved.
Well, and the article mentioned that some companies are already doing this really well, like IBM. They're already investing heavily in their employees to help them adapt to this new world.
Yeah, and I think that's a smart move because, by investing in your employees, you're essentially investing in your own future.
So what about the rest of us? What can we do? We don't all work at, these giant corporations. How can we prepare?
Well, I mean, I think the most important thing is to be proactive, right? Don't wait for your company to tell you what skills you need to learn. Go out and learn them yourself. Take some online courses, go to some workshops.
Read some books.
Read some books. Exactly. Yeah. There's a wealth of information out there. And the other thing I would say is to network. Talk to people in your field. Talk to people who are doing the kind of work that you're interested in doing and see what skills they're learning.
So really it's about taking control of your own career, your own destiny.
Exactly. You're not just a cog in a machine. You're an individual with your own unique skills and talents, and you need to take ownership of your career.
I love that.
Don't just sit back and wait for things to happen. Go out and make things happen.
Okay, so we've talked about how these new technologies and these new ways of working are affecting businesses. Yeah. But we also need to talk about how to implement them properly. How do we make sure that this transition is sustainable? How do we make sure that it's actually beneficial for everybody involved?
Right. Because it's not enough to just, throw technology at a problem and hope that it goes away. You need to have a plan. You need to have a strategy.
Let's go back to that robotics and food processing example.
Yeah.
If I'm a company that's deciding, okay, I'm going to use robotic arms to help me, with this work, I can't just buy a bunch of robot arms and then just hope that my employees figure it out.
Exactly. You need to train your employees on how to use those robots, how to maintain them, how to, troubleshoot them when they break down.
Right. So really it's about investing in your employees just as much as you're investing in the technology itself.
Absolutely. And I think that's something that a lot of companies, they kind of overlook that, right? They get so focused on the technology that they forget about the people.
They think the technology is the solution.
Right. And the reality is that the technology is only part of the solution. The other part is the people.
And making sure that they can use it and that they're happy using it.
Exactly.
Well, and this applies to AI too.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. AI is another, it's another big one that companies are really starting to embrace, and for good reason. Right. AI has the potential to really transform the way we work.
Right. And there's a lot of hype around AI, but we have to remember it's a tool, and we have to know how to use it, and we have to know how to integrate it into our companies properly.
Right. And it's not just about automating jobs. It's about using AI to augment human capabilities, to help us make better decisions, to help us be more productive, to help us be more creative.
So it sounds like communication is key in all of this. Like companies have to be very clear with their employees about what's happening and what's expected of them.
Oh, absolutely. Communication is paramount. If you don't have good communication, then you're going to have, a lot of fear, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of, resistance to change.
Right. So it's really about being open, being transparent, and really kind of working together to make sure that everyone's on board.
Exactly. And it's also about, providing opportunities for employees to give feedback, right? To share their concerns, to ask questions.
So it's a two-way street.
Right. It's not just a one-way street where the company is dictating to the employees. It's a partnership.
So it's really about creating this culture of trust and collaboration.
Exactly. And I think that's really the key to success in this new world of work.
Okay, so we've talked about how these technologies are impacting businesses. We've talked about how to implement them properly. But what about the people at the very top? What about executives? What role do they play in all this?
Well, I think executives have a huge role to play in this transition, right?
Yeah.
They're the ones who are ultimately responsible for setting the vision for the company, for making sure that the company is moving in the right direction.
Right. So they have to have that big picture view. They have to know, where the company's going and how these technologies can help them get there.
Exactly. And they also need to be they need to be champions for change, right? They need to be the ones who are, encouraging their employees to embrace these new technologies, to learn new skills.
They can't just say, okay, here's the new technology, go figure it out. They have to be involved in the process.
Exactly. They need to be, they need to be visible. They need to be, they need to be talking about these things. They need to be, showing that they're committed to this transition.
So it's about leading by example.
Exactly. And I think that's really important because, if the employees don't see that the leadership is committed to this, then they're not going to be committed to it either.
And that goes back to that communication piece that we were talking about before.
Absolutely.
That they have to be, talking to the employees, letting them know what's going on.
And listening to them, right? Listening to their concerns, listening to their feedback.
That's really important. I mean, I think a lot of people forget about that. They think that, executives just kind of sit in their offices and make decisions. But really, they have to be out there. They have to be talking to people. They have to be understanding what's going on the ground.
Absolutely. And the best executives are the ones who are really in touch with their employees, who understand what their needs are, who understand what their concerns are, and who are working to address those needs and concerns.
And they have to be willing to experiment and maybe fail sometimes. Like, this is new territory for a lot of companies, right?
Absolutely. We're all kind of making this up as we go along, right? There's no playbook for this, and so it's really important to be willing to experiment, to try new things, to learn from your mistakes, and to adapt as you go.
So really, it's about having that growth mindset and understanding that you're not always going to get it right the first time.
Exactly. And that's okay, right? The important thing is to learn from your mistakes and to keep moving forward.
So it sounds like this whole transition to this new world of work, it's really a journey.
Yeah, it's a journey. It's not a destination.
That's a really good way to put it.
And it's a journey that we're all on together, right? It's not just about individual companies or individual employees. It's about all of us working together to create a better future of work.
Well said. Yeah. Well, we've covered a lot of ground in this first segment. We've talked about workforce development, sustainable adoption, and the role of leadership in navigating this transition.
Mm-hmm.
What are some key takeaways that our listeners can use, as they kind of go through this process themselves?
Well, I think the most important takeaway is that the world of work is changing, and it's changing rapidly, and the skills that are in demand today might not be the skills that are in demand tomorrow. So it's really important to be adaptable. It's really important to be constantly learning and growing.
So be a lifelong learner.
Exactly. Never stop learning.
And remember, you're not alone in this. There are resources available to help you, whether it's online learning platforms or professional development programs or even just reaching out to your network.
Yeah, and don't be afraid to ask for help. There's no shame in admitting that you don't know something or that you need help with something.
Well, and I think that's one of the great things about, this community that we're building here.
Absolutely. We're all in this together.
We're all learning and we're all trying to figure this out together. So don't be afraid to reach out, to ask questions, to share your experiences, because we can all learn from each other.
Absolutely. And, building on what we were just talking about with workforce development, it's not just about teaching employees to use the new software or run the machines.
Right. It's about, like you said, those soft skills, the problem solving, being able to think critically. Like, those are the things that are really going to set people apart, right?
Exactly, because those are the things that are much harder to automate.
Yeah.
And the article from the Economic Times, Future of Work, Adaptability Key for Corporate Success, I thought they really hit the nail on the head with that one. Because it's really saying this crazy world, this rapidly changing landscape that we're in, the ability to adapt, to be flexible, to be a lifelong learner, that's what's going to make you successful.
It almost feels like, adaptability is like the new currency, right?
Yeah.
The more adaptable you are, the more valuable you become.
Absolutely. And we were talking about IBM before. That's something that they're really recognizing, and they're putting a lot of resources behind upskilling and reskilling their workforce because they understand that that's really tied to their own success.
So it's a win-win for everybody.
Absolutely, yeah.
But what about the rest of us, right? Like, what about the people who don't work at, these giant corporations? What steps can individuals take to get ready for these changes?
Well, I mean, I think there are a ton of resources out there. Everything from online learning platforms to, code and boot camps. There are all sorts of industry-specific certifications you can get, and honestly, I think networking is a big one too, right?
Yeah.
Just connecting with people in your field, staying informed about what's going on, what the trends are, what the skills are that are in demand. I think that's huge.
So it sounds like it's really about being proactive. You can't just sit back and wait for somebody to tell you what to do. You have to kind of take charge of your own career.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, you really got to be the captain of your own ship, so to speak.
I love that.
And that kind of brings us back to this idea of sustainable adoption.
Right.
Because it's not enough for companies to just buy a bunch of technology and then just throw it at their employees and say, okay, figure it out.
Here's your robot.
Yeah, exactly right. Here's your robot. Good luck. No, they really need to think about how they're going to integrate these technologies in a way that's going to be, beneficial for everybody.
So like, for example, going back to the food processing thing,
Yeah.
they might bring in those robotic arms to do those repetitive tasks, but then they need to make sure that their employees are trained on how to work with those robots, how to fix them if they break down.
Mm-hmm. Right. Or even, think about how those jobs are going to change. Maybe instead of, doing that repetitive task, now they're going to be in charge of quality control, or they're going to be in charge of, optimizing the process.
So it's really about looking at the whole picture.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's not just about replacing people with machines. It's about, rethinking the way we work. Rethinking the way we organize work.
It's that collaboration.
Exactly.
Yeah, and this applies to AI as well. I mean, companies really need to figure out where AI is going to be the most valuable, how to use it effectively. And then again, train those employees on how to use those new tools.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think that's where, communication is really key, right? Because if companies aren't transparent with their employees about how these technologies are going to impact their jobs, then, that's where you start to get that fear, that uncertainty, that resistance.
Nobody likes to be kept in the dark.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So I think the more that companies can be open and transparent about, their plans for implementing these technologies, the better.
And actually ask the employees for their input. I mean, they're the ones that are actually doing the work.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, who better to give feedback on how to improve a process than the people who are actually doing the process day in and day out?
So it sounds like what we're really talking about here is creating this culture of open communication, of collaboration, where employees feel like they're part of the solution and not just cogs in a machine.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's a really good way to put it.
Now we've talked about how to implement these technologies, in a sustainable way, but what about leadership? I mean, what role do executives play in all of this?
Well, I mean, I think executives have a huge role to play, right? Because they're the ones who are ultimately responsible for setting the vision for the company.
Right. So they need to be able to see the big picture, understand how these technologies are going to help them achieve their goals.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think they also need to be, they need to be champions for change. They need to be the ones who are, encouraging their employees to embrace these new technologies, to learn new skills.
So they can't just kind of sit in their office and say, okay, go do this.
Yeah.
They have to be involved in the process.
Exactly. Yeah. They need to be visible. They need to be, they need to be talking about this stuff. They need to be showing that they're committed to it.
So it's about leading by example.
Exactly. And I think that's really important because, if employees don't see that the leadership is committed to this, then they're not going to be committed to it either.
Well, and it goes back to that communication piece that we were talking about before.
Exactly. Yeah.
They have to be talking to the employees, letting them know what's going on, listening to their concerns.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people forget that. They think that executives just kind of sit in their ivory tower and make decisions, but really, the best executives are the ones who are out there. They're talking to people. They're trying to understand what's going on the ground.
Absolutely. And they're not afraid to get their hands dirty.
Yeah.
They're not afraid to roll up their sleeves and really get involved in the process.
And they have to be willing to experiment. They have to be willing to maybe fail sometimes. I mean, this is new territory for a lot of companies, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, we're all kind of, making this up as we go along.
Right.
There's no playbook for this.
Right.
So it's really important to be willing to experiment, to try new things, to learn from your mistakes.
So have that growth mindset.
Exactly. Yeah.
Understand that you're not always going to get it right the first time.
Right. And that's okay. The important thing is to learn from those mistakes and to keep moving forward.
So it sounds like this whole transition to this new world of work, it's really a journey.
Yeah, it's a journey. It's not a destination.
That's a great way to put it.
And it's a journey that we're all on together, right? This isn't just about individual companies or individual employees. It's about all of us working together to create a better future of work.
Well said. So we've covered a lot in this segment. We talked about workforce development, sustainable adoption, the role of leadership. Before we move on, what are some key takeaways for our listeners that they can use in their own journey?
Well, I think the most important takeaway is that the world of work is changing, and it's changing rapidly. And the skills that are in demand today might not be the skills that are in demand tomorrow.
Right.
So it's really important to be adaptable. It's really important to be, constantly learning and growing.
So be a lifelong learner.
Exactly. Never stop learning.
Yeah.
There are resources out there, whether it's online learning platforms or professional development programs or even just reaching out to your network.
And you're not alone in this. There's a lot of people going through the same thing, so.
Absolutely. Yeah. And don't be afraid to ask for help. There's no shame in admitting that you don't know something or that you need help with something. That's what that's what community is all about.
That's what we're here for.
And really at the end of the day, empower yourself to kind of take control of your own career. Don't just sit back and let things happen to you.
Right. Like be the one making those things happen. And what's really interesting is that this isn't just about individuals surviving in this new world. It's really about making a better world of work for everybody.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think that, if we all kind of embrace this idea of continuous learning, if we advocate for responsible adoption of technology, if we support these workforce development initiatives, I really think that we can shape a future where technology is actually enhancing our lives and not replacing us.
I love that. I love that perspective. It's not humans versus machines.
Right.
It's humans and machines working together.
Exactly. Yeah. And that kind of brings us back to this concept of fractional roles that we were talking about before.
Right.
And this is something that I think is really beneficial, not just for companies, but for individuals as well.
Right.
Because it allows individuals to really specialize, right?
Yeah.
To become experts in a particular niche and to kind of build their own personal brand.
Yeah, like you could have 5 different clients that you're working with and you're doing all this really cool stuff for each one.
Exactly. Yeah. And it allows you to kind of work on a variety of different projects, across different industries.
Right, you're not stuck doing the same thing every single day.
Exactly. And I think that's something that a lot of people are really looking for, right? They're looking for more flexibility, they're looking for more variety in their work.
They want to be challenged.
Yeah.
They want to be engaged.
Exactly.
And this is where, all those human skills, those soft skills that we were talking about, the creativity, the problem solving, the emotional intelligence, that's where those really come into play.
Absolutely. Yeah, because those are the things that machines can't do, right?
Not yet,
Not yet, right? But even then, I think there's always going to be a need for human creativity, for human ingenuity. So I think if you focus on developing those skills, you're going to be in good shape for the future.
And that continuous learning piece.
Oh, absolutely.
You said it's a journey.
It's a journey. You got to keep learning. You got to keep growing. You got to keep adapting.
Because the world is not going to wait for us.
No, it's not. It's moving fast.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what final thoughts do you have for our listeners? They've heard all this stuff. What can they actually start doing today?
Yeah.
To get ready for this?
Well, I would say, first of all, don't panic.
Yeah.
This is not the end of the world.
It's the beginning of something new.
It's the beginning of something new, and it's actually a really exciting time to be alive.
It is.
There's so much opportunity out there, and if you're willing to embrace change, if you're willing to learn and grow, you can really thrive in this new world.
I love that.
So I guess my final piece of advice would be to just, be curious.
Yeah.
Ask questions, explore new things. Don't be afraid to step outside your comfort zone.
That's great advice.
And remember that you're not alone in this, right? There's a whole community of people out there who are going through the same thing.
That's what we're here for. And we want to thank everyone for listening to this deep dive. We hope you found it insightful. We hope you found it helpful.
Yeah.
And we hope that you'll continue to join us on this journey as we explore the future of work together. And of course, if you want to stay ahead in AI and tech, you got to try IdeaData. Join thousands of professionals in AI, tech, and business from Fortune 500 companies like IBM, MetLife, Amazon, and more. Get smarter on AI, tech, and new markets. We'll see you all next time.